Sir, I'm holding something, so. Surprise, motherfucker! What's up? I was holding a book in my hand with questions from Grim Jim. James Desborough from jolly old England had some questions for me. I assume he had questions for other people too, but he did specifically ask me and send me some questions. I think he sent me like 14. These are the first six, so I'm just going to do one video of these. I haven't even read the other ones, but I will probably do another video following up pretty soon. So these are the first six. Yeah, I got my cool little notebook, and this is just, I don't know, a friend gave me this. It's like a Star Wars thing. Ta-da! There's the Cordalis meta sigil. And yeah, let's go and fucking do this. Okay. How did you get into role playing games in the first place? And I'm gonna make all these pretty short. Okay, so myself and my cousin is my usually year. I have two cousins. One that was a boy. It's a year and a half older than me, and then there was a girl a year and a half younger than me. They both still exist. And when I was young, I don't know. I don't know the exact year. I just know that it was, I don't know, somewhere around, I'm thinking 1982, 1983. I got the Moldvay Magenta Box basic D&D box set for, I don't know, whatever, my birthday, or maybe it was Thanksgiving, or both, since they're right around the same time, possibly Christmas, I don't know. So I got that, and then my cousin got a couple other, I think he got like a couple modules or something like that, and we didn't really know what we were doing. We were just like, oh, this looks cool. I don't know. I assume that. So from my cousin's mom, that's who we got from. So I assume that she went to a game store, or bookstore, or hobby store, and just asked, like, what do 10-year-old boys like? And then she got that, and yeah, like I said, we didn't really know what we were doing or like how to play. But then, like an older friend, or I think a friend's older brother or babysitter or whatever, basically showed us the ropes on how to play, and after that, then the rest is history. So that was my first introduction to role playing games. Okay, number two. What does or does not make a game old school to you? That, as you can probably tell, is a complicated question. And that's why it gets asked so frequently, I think, because like I don't even know anymore. I mean, you could just answer simply like, well, you know it when you see it, or something like that. But that's kind of a cop out. For me personally, old school, my kind of old school, is interwoven with rules light stuff. And I know there are plenty of old school games out there that are not rules light, that are very crunchy, very complicated, and a lot of math or advanced calculus or whatever. To me, I know that is technically old school because it is old, but to me, that's not my kind of old school. And when you're specifically talking about the OSR, the old school Renaissance, I'm thinking of, going back to the first question, the basic expert sets of D&D that came out in the early '80s, and you just kind of like extrapolate from there. For instance, the VengerCon, it's primarily for old school OSR and traditional role playing games, and basically it's immersion focused, and I think a lot of new school and modern gaming breaks away from immersion, and immersion is not the most important thing in those games or to those types of players. And I think that's the central divide. Because as long as we're being immersed and we feel like, to some degree, we're in that world, we are these characters, we're playing this, like all this on some other level of reality is real, then I don't care if you use only a 12-sided die and some tiddlywinks, and you just trade back and forth some sort of imaginary metacurrency. As long as it feels like we're there, then you could possibly call it old school. I don't know. That's what I have to say about that. If you could only play one RPG ever again, which would it be? Well, I have been so into Chult and Crimson Dragon Slayer D20, along with the sister system, Encounter Critical 3. Those are kind of like two sides of the same coin. But that's what I would do. That's what I'm currently involved in, campaign wise, and I've been doing that for a long time. When I go to conventions, that's primarily what I run, either my own VengerCon or others, like GameholeCon or GaryCon. And if there was another convention in there, I would run that. I would run in my own Chult world, Eldritch, Gonzo, science fantasy, post-apocalypse, and then I would use a simple O5R, so like OSR 5E hybrid hack to run it, because that's, I don't know, that's personally what I like. Yeah, I've been doing that for years now, and I don't see myself stopping, so that's an easy one. I would just keep doing that if I didn't have a choice. Okay, number 4. You include a lot of pop culture references, in your work, to the point of copyright infringement. Explain yourself. Well, my work is a lot of humor, and it's satirical, and I do a lot of parodies and things like that. But also, I find the medium of role playing games is you have to use things that, if not everybody at the table, as many people as possible have a strong frame of reference for. And that, for me, is primarily like the TV shows and the movies that I grew up with, and also that just kind of fuels, and the things that I've read, H.P. Lovecraft and others, that fuels a lot of my thinking and my writing, and my game design and adventure writing and the way I run things. So I write basically what I would run. So it serves two purposes. The things that I publish, generally speaking, are the things that I also use myself at my own table, in my own games. And so, yeah. Plus, it's just fun. A lot of people don't do that, so it kind of sets me apart a little bit, I guess. And I usually tweak stuff and also find the humor in spots where I can, and so I think that alleviates me of actual copyright infringement. Okay. Your work often contains memes and like internet slang that rapidly become outdated. Doesn't that worry you? I have bigger things to worry about. And second, not really. I mean, things are just a product of their time, and if you work really hard to sanitize that stuff, it might feel less dated 5 to 10 years from now, but it will also lose a little bit of that charm. And I like things that are immediate. I like things that like, oh shit, that just happened 6 months ago, or 18 months ago, or 2 weeks ago, and so it feels current, and it feels like you're actively engaged or exploring culture that is happening in real time. And I also like the idea of you're playing a game that had all the idiosyncrasies and weirdness and tropes and cliches and things like that of a long time ago. So 10 years, let's say 15 years from now, I hope people are still living Chult. Hopefully I'm around to, to see that and hear people say that they still love it. Tentacles crossed. Um, and I think it'd be cool when people are like, oh my God, I like barely remember that thing that, happened like 16, 17 years ago, and you included that in your game, and that's funny and bizarre, and or conversely, people are like, they have no reference for that. It's something that I included in a monster's description or loot that players could get, or the name of Federation base or something like that. Um, People won't have any recollection. Some people won't have any recollection of like what that is referring to, what that references. And I think that's neat too, that people will just use things as they are without knowing, like, oh, that is actually a reference to this thing over here. And then maybe at some point in their life, they'll make that connection. They'll be like, oh shit, he was talking about this thing. Oh yeah, he totally ripped that off from this other thing. Um, you know, so it does multiple duties, and I just think that's fun and neat, and it's something that a lot of people don't do, and that's one of the things that detracts me to it, because very few people are doing it. I don't know. I love doing things that not everybody else does. All right, where are we? Okay, one more. This is number 6. Your work has become more political, even though you have taken stances against politics in games. What gives? That also is kind of a multi-layered answer. Just right off the bat, the political environment that we're currently in is not like anything I've ever known being alive. Not too long ago, I watched a couple movies. One in particular, it stars Elliot Gould and Candice Bergen. It's like a 19 late 60s, early 70s movie. It takes place on like a college campus, and Elliot Gould is like going for his doctorate or something like that, and he wants to become a teacher, and there's just so much upheaval and civil unrest and political craziness, and because it's right around the Vietnam War, and you see kids rioting, and glass being broken and bombs being thrown, and the police and the military being called in, and like one side versus another side is fucking crazy, and we're kind of going through that again. So these are kind of unique times. is basically what I'm saying. And unique times calls for different kind of response. Any other time before the current era, yeah, I really wouldn't, because politics didn't really. I always had a mild interest in politics, but nothing major. Um, but now I find myself listening to and watching the news and political commentary and figuring out what's going on and various candidates and politicians. I'm tuned in because I feel like in this day and age I have to be. So that's definitely a factor. Um, I was very much of the liberal persuasion back in, I'd say, the 90s. I was born in 1974, so politically, I wasn't really that aware of anything in the 80s, maybe by the end of the 80s. My freshman year of high school, I think, was 1989. So maybe a teensy bit in the 80s, but mostly the 90s, because I did most of my high school during the 90s. I went to college and graduated in the 90s, and then I started working, and so in the 90s, I would say that I was very much a liberal. And just having grown up, and now the Overton window and everything else is kind of shifted. Maybe everybody doesn't agree with that, but I see it. A lot of other people do, so I'm taking it as, that's objective reality. And so if I've always been kind of like so I went from like a slightly left moderate centrist to a slightly right moderate centrist. Some of that is because I've just gotten older, and your values and priorities and beliefs and things like that shift. As you go from your 20s to your 30s to your 40s. I'm 48 now. But some of that is, I see what's happening in the culture, and it just freaks me out and worries me, especially because I have kids, and I don't want them to grow up in some crazy radical left revolutionary. It's like the sexual revolution part 2, and it's going about as well as Woodstock 2. If you remember that, also from the 90s. That literally, after day 2, was a shit show. Literally. And I wasn't there, but I watched it on TV when I was younger. And then I also saw that Netflix documentary. So that's kind of where it's going. It's kind of the political climate now and the culture today is kind of just as far as the eye can see, porta potties just uprooted and lying flat. It's spilling over, and drugs and dehydration and the evils of corporate America and perhaps, yes, runaway capitalism and rape. And did I mention drugs? So yeah, it's kind of and just being like trapped in it where you can't like get out or go anywhere. Yeah, it's kind of a nightmare. And so that's why I find myself among conservative circles now. And while I don't generally put a lot of political stuff in my games, it's all from my perspective and my point of view. So yeah, occasionally I will. Plus, it's funny to poke fun at, various sacred cows and our elite ruling class. which is very much, liberal and woke these days. So I poke fun at that. The biggest, um, still doing a video. Maybe it was the wind. I don't know. The biggest political one was the Good Samaritan, and that's available for free now on Big Geek Emporium. It was a little too much for Drive-Thru RPG, which I totally understand. They didn't want to get into that. It was taken down within hours of my uploading it originally last year at some point. And that's because Roe versus Wade had just been overturned. And I kind of, in the back of my mind, wanted to do something that was to commemorate that. But then the straw that broke the camel's back that really pushed me to write something in that direction was the Drive-Thru RPG bundle that was heavily advertised all over the fucking internet. Wherever you went to a role-playing game forum or something like that, you saw this, or Drive-Thru itself, you saw this advertised. And it was specifically against the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And it was definitely pro-abortion or pro-choice. And it was anti-pro-life. And I think the money specifically was going to these organizations or charities or whatever that were pro-abortion. And that bothered me. Just the utter blatant politicalization, whatever, of that issue. And I like going the other way. If everybody is going to the right, then generally speaking, I will feel compelled to check out the left, and vice versa. So yeah, that was kind of a deep dive, that one short adventure into politics. But generally speaking, my politics is kind of light. Like I said, I'll poke fun at this and that, and I'll mention something that's happening that I'm either interested in, or something that bugs me, or something that I think is cool. But it's just kind of layered into all the other things that are either being referenced, or that there's a lot that goes into the things that I make, and Schalt, and a lot of different layers. There's 111 layers, and politics is just one of those things. So yeah, you can see it in places here and there, but generally, I mean, it's just because it's not super interesting to bring real world politics into a gaming product, generally speaking. And that's another reason I don't do it that often. But yeah, I did do an anti-abortion themed adventure, The Good Samaritan, and yeah, so that was admittedly very heavy-handed. But yeah, I don't generally do that. Okay, so those are your 6 questions, and this is a 24-minute video. So I guess we're done. For those, I should make a video about this soon too. I just uploaded Advanced Game Mastering Like a Fucking Boss, so that is now on Drive-Thru RPG. I will put a link in the description below. And please like and subscribe, and feel free to comment, and all that good stuff. Trying to, build the channel up over 1,000 subscribers, so that's cool. You could help me be on the way to 1,200 or wherever I'm at currently. So anyway, thank you, and hope your gaming is awesome. That's it.